Hello, my name is Daniel Brasher, and today on my video reflection, I'll be talking to you about my placement experience at St John's Regional College in Dandenong. The issue I'll be reflecting on is my planning for classes and how it affected my early classes at my placement. In the first lesson I took by myself, which was on my second day, my mentor teacher, Marina Soulis, was not present as she was away sick, I believe. This left Mr. David Fong to sit in on my class in her place. I was delivering a Year 7 maths class on the first class of the new topic of algebra. My learning outcomes planned for this lesson were from the Year 7 Mathematics Victorian Curriculum page, as well as the St John's Semester Planner, and it were as follows. Number 1. Introduce the concept of variables as a way of representing numbers using letters. And number 2, create algorithmic expressions and evaluate them by substituting a given value for each variable. David took the first half of the double period, which I had originally planned with Maria to take both of the periods together. I think this threw me off a little bit, but moving on, I ended up putting up a pretty poor lesson altogether, with a below average handout that I gave out to the students as well. It was my first lesson back in almost a year without teaching, and I had no observation classes at this point as it was my second day. However, my planning should have been good because it wasn't affected about how long I had been away from teaching for. Once the class had wrapped up, David came over to me and we had started to talk. David had taken notes down of everything I did well and everything that I didn't do well, and he had written, at first I was horrified because of how much he had written, but then I thought if he didn't actually care, he wouldn't have written half a page. He would have written half a page, not full. And this is just David's notes here. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Lots of constructive criticism. So, to summarise, David believed that my lesson planning needed to improve in order to improve my whole lesson together. He thought my timing was off, that my worksheet wasn't well looked over, and he thought my way of teaching was a bit too teacher-centred or direct instruction, rather than my overall lesson need to be clearer outcomes and clearer structure. As David was saying, I thought the class was very teacher-centred. The information was coming from me and it was being given to them. I was choosing what they would learn and how they would learn it. I think my classroom for those periods was very much a behavioural conditioning classroom environment. I was quite good at controlling the class and the class level. However, I was constantly instructing them to do things and not giving much room for individual thinking outside. David also asked me to plan for students of all range of abilities, as this class had many weak students and a couple of very strong excelling students too. This became evident when I started collecting homework, that some of the students had a lot of trouble reading English and writing English and with their literacy skills, but they'd worked very well with numbers. The quickest and simplest way to improve from this lesson was to take more time to more carefully plan out my future lessons, in a much more detailed order to always be on top of the class as well as be ready for unexpected circumstances. This in turn also helped me change my learning theory, as before I was in the classroom I was using the classic behavioural learning theory. Now I was using a mixture between the behavioural learning theory and a newly added constructivist theory, as well as a slight part of cognitive theory as well. I was using behavioural in order to use positive reinforcements and praise of the students. Constructivist I had added in later, for it allows for new learning information to take on more meaning, further solidifying classwork in a student's mind if it has meaning behind it. Cognitive was what I added last, as I tried to view algebra in a different light by adding fun Kahoots and quizzes and different games in order to make it more fun and interactive for all students. Adding these three techniques together allowed me to still be good at controlling the class, but now allow the class to think individually and start expressing their individual creativeness as a way of thinking when it comes to algebra. The addition of the cognitive theory also allowed me to further the weaker students who had trouble reading and writing English. Kahoots do not have a lot of words, and you can make a math Kahoot with no words if need be. This allowed me to measure how well these students were progressing even if they very much struggled with their literacy. So in conclusion, I had a very positive experience learning from many important aspects of my life as a teacher, as well as aspects to use in the classroom in order to maximize the benefits of all of my future students. Thank you.